Welcome to Creative Tian channel. Today I want to show you how to use knitting machine to sew up a little panel for stockinette stitch. It can be nice finish for a sweater and it will stop the curve of the stockinette stitch. The most common edge finish or the trim is a ribbon, either 1x1 or 2x2. And this is another way to finish the edge. If you don't have a ribber on the machine, you can just use plain stitch and knit as you go to create a trim edge. I'm using my Brother 260 bulky knitting machine because I like to use thicker yarns, DK or worsted weight. Here I have worsted weight yarn and I already knit the sample. It's just a simple stockinette stitch. I have 30 stitches wide. You can use LK 150 knitting machine or any types of the machine. The process is the same. After I knit the stockinette stitch, I steam it to make it more flat, but you can see the edge still curls. And that's just the nature of the stockinette stitch. So I'm trying to add a band here on the side so it will create a little panel and stop the curve. And the first thing we have to decide how many stitches you want here. I'm going to start with 8 stitches and then maybe I can fold it over to finish the other side. So I pull out 8 stitches and I'm going to start with E-rub cast on. I have tension 7 for my main piece, so I'm going down 1 number to tension 6. You don't have to do that, but sometimes you can play with it. Maybe use a lighter yarn for the band. And I'm going to start with the bottom right side of the piece with the back side facing me. And when we look closer, you can see the line and the knot. The line or the loop and then a little knot. I'm trying to pick up all the loop and skip the knot and then go to the next loop. So that's the front side, that's the back side, and I start with the corner. I pick up the first loop and place it on the left needle. And the first one I can hold it down with my hand and just knit across. And then I'm going to add some weight. And now I'm picking up the second loop. See, this is the first loop. There's a knot and the second loop. We place it back. Knit across. See the loop, the knot, and the next loop. The next one. Next loop. I'm going to bind off and take it off the machine. That's the finished panel. Because we have smaller tension here, so it's a little bit tight. You can play with the tension to get the right fabric. Sometimes we can skip stitch. Maybe every 4 or 5 stitch you can skip one. So you will match the other side. And this is the back side. Now we can fold it in half. And you can use thread and needle or use yarn to sew up this side with a simple whip stitch that will finish the edge nicely. That's one way to do it. For the other side, I'm going to attach things in the opposite way. So the back side of the stockinette stitch will be next to the right side of the main knitting. It creates an interesting contrast. Again, I'm pulling out 8 needles just like before. You can decide how many stitches you want. And instead of the wrong side facing you, starting from the corner, I'm going to have the right side facing me. And I start the first stitch from the corner again. So we do the same thing, E-rod cast on, and then pick up the first stitch from this corner. And when we look closely, that's the same. We will have a loop and a knot, and we pick up the loops. This time I changed the tension to number 7, the same as my main knitting piece. And for the band, you don't really have to do plain stockinette stitch. You can do some ribbing with the hand manipulation. Or if you want, you can do a cable here. You can do a 2x2 cable or 3x3 cable crossing. Now we are ready to hang our first stitch. Again, this is the side we want to connect. And we start with the bottom corner with the right side facing me. So the first stitch is here. That's the first loop. Hang it on the left needle and then just knit across. I will hang some weight. Now I hang my second loop and then just knit across. And we just continue the next loop. You can see the loop here. If you want to do a ribbing or cable crossing, after a few rows, you can start undo the stitch you want to refold, and then just refold it with your latch. For now, I'm just going to do the plain stitches. Now I finished the panel, I'm just going to bind off. You can bind off any way you want. I'm just binding off the easy way. So that's what it looks like. And I have seen some sweaters, they just leave it like that as finish, so it has a curl finish. That makes the sweater more casual, but it's still part of the design. And we look at the back side, that's what it looks like. It's pretty neat. You can use the back side as a front side too, and you can also fold it in half, like that. If you do the ribbing by latching up the stitch and transform to the purl stitch, then you don't have the curl for this panel. It will be flat, and that's a different look too. And you'll look almost identical in the front and the back side. Next one I want to try is to turn the piece sideways so we can connect this part with a new knitting panel. It doesn't have to be the side of stockinette stitch. If you have different types of stitch, you can do the same thing. The only thing difference is to make sure the tension will match. And the typical way is to skip a stitch for every few stitches, and maybe 3 or 5 stitches you skip a stitch. The best way is to make a little sample swatch and test it out to see if that's the look you want, because every yarn is different, every machine is a little bit different. Now I'm trying to do this side. You can see that's my E-rod cast on edge. I think I will start with this corner and go over the top. And I'm going to do similar to this side with the right side and wrong side next to each other. I think that's an interesting finish. I will do 10 stitches this time to make it bigger. So we do it the same way, cast on with E-rod and then hang the first stitch. So this is the side I want to connect, so I start with the right bottom corner. This one doesn't look like a loop and a knot, So I'm going to just use this one in the front that look like a bigger loop and see how it goes. Now the second loop. The third one. If it's too loose, I will adjust the tension to make tension smaller, or I can pick up more stitches. And if it's too tight, you can always loosen the tension or pick up less stitches. So I take it off the machine, and this is the trim we just need. It covers the first trim and the second trim we need. That looks like a nice edge, and this is the other side. It's a right side next to the wrong side of the stockinette stitch. And it still curls, so I'm going to fold it in half and just stitch it up. So that's after I sew it, including this part and this trim. This can be a front edge of a sweater or side of a blanket, and it's very strong, it will not roll. If you don't like it this thick, you can use a thinner yarn and use a different gauge. You just have to play with it and knit a sample first. Now this is a piece after blocking. You can see this still has a curving stockinette stitch. This side has a wrong side finish facing us, and this side has a right side facing us. It curves differently, but it depends on your design. Either way, it will work. And for the bottom side, I fold it in half and stitch it up so it has a very strong edge. It's a little bit thick, but it can still be a good edging for a blanket or sweater. Thank you for watching today, and talk to you next week.